Hi and welcome, my name is Lawrence Baker and this video is going to be about rescuing a badly exposed image using Luminosity Masks in Photoshop. I'm here in Lightroom, it's a raw file, I could edit it here but I'm going to do that in Photoshop and I want to bring it in as a smart object so I can invoke Adobe Camera Raw. So it's Photo, Editing, open a smart object in Photoshop. If I was in Bridge, let's say, double click to bring up Adobe Camera Raw, open object, and it'll open as a smart object because in my workflow options at the bottom, Photoshop, open in Photoshop as smart objects. Untick, go like that, I see open image. If I press the shift key, I see open object. Cancel, because I've done this all already. Layers, here's my image as a smart object in Photoshop. Now, right click, go new smart object via copy. I'm going to do it twice. If I go Command and Control J, it will duplicate the same smart object, yes, but if I update one, it updates the rest. So I don't want that. I want three separate smart objects. So this one's going to be called normal. This one's going to be called dark. And this one's going to be called bright. Right. What I'm going to do is develop each one as if, let's say, I shot with exposure bracketing, 3 shots, let's say at 2 EV apart. I'm going to bring the normal one up to what I call a normal sort of develop. So auto, I'm trying to sort of have a balanced exposure of the scene. So I'm going to bring the shadows up, bring the exposure up quite a bit. It's looking reasonably okay. Bring the clarity up and the contrast up. There's a lot of problems in this image. You can't see it, but there's a lot of noise in the sky. It's so much, it's unbelievable. My camera's being pushed by the actual dynamic range of the scene. But I only got one shot, so I'm going to have to just use this one shot. So vibrance, I'm going to leave as is. And I think, that looks pretty good. The clarity, a little bit more clarity to help it along a bit. Sharpening, well, quickly, amount about 70 to 80. Radius about 1.3 to 4, somewhere around there. Detailed down to about 17. Masking, Alt Option key kept pressed till I see it. Well, I see the sky completely black. There's a lot of noise in that sky. If it's luminance noise and I sharpening sort of increases luminance around pixels, it will cause me problems. So mask it out till the sky's black. And luminance, I do know there's a lot, but quickly around 30 odd will do me. I'm going to save that as a preset down here, quickly, call it test or something. So I recognize it's only a test and a question mark there or an exclamation mark. And then check none and just make sure I check sharpening luminance noise as well. So off I go. So I can use that on the other two images. Okay, so that's my normal sort of balanced exposure. The best I could do with Adobe Camera Raw. I could have spent a little bit more time, but I can always come back to it. Dark, double click, it's almost there already because it's dark, but I'm going to make it a little bit brighter, ironically, because it's too dark. You want something showing here, so I'm going to bring up the exposure a little bit, bring down the highlights quite a bit, but bring the exposure up again. I'm looking all the time and thinking, how can I make that sky there look a bit convincing and real? In fact, around there, and I might take the exposure down a wee bit more. Bring up the shadows, I don't want it too dark. And maybe bring up the clarity and a bit of vibrance and saturation just to help that sunset along, but not too much. I am going to play with the temperature here. I wouldn't normally, but just to make it a little bit bluer. I only care about the sky here because the dark one's going to supply the sky. So that looks pretty good. Dehaze a bit as well, and that's helping that sky along. Probably still a bit too dark. I know that sounds ridiculous, but that's looking pretty good. I might bring the contrast up to help it along. Sharpening, use the preset, and it was test. There you go, test exclamation mark. That's done. So that's my dark one, which is going to be the sky. The bright one is going to be the building and the foreground. That building's a medieval lighthouse, by the way. Bright, double click. It's pretty obvious. I might do a auto. Bring up the exposure even more. Bring up the shadows a lot. So it's going to be my bright one. I only care about this foreground and especially that building because it's the main subject. So contrast quite a lot because I want that quite punchy. You know, this is a badly exposed photograph, and I'm trying to bring the best out of that building, which won't be easy actually. It's caused me problems in the past, this type of thing. So I'm looking again. I don't want it too bright, but I might bring the highlights up a little bit. The highlights are not really helping the building along too much. I also think the vibrance is too much on that grass, so I might bring that down as well and bring the saturation down a bit. I only care about, I might make the building slightly warmer actually. A little bit more, Lawrence. I'm just thinking that's as far as I'm going to go. Again, preset, test, sharpened it up. Okay. I realised I could do a hell of a lot more in Adobe Camera Raw, but I want to keep this moving. Ultra Option key kept press on normal. Now, Luminosity Masks require you to use, before you create them, the most balanced image. And this is the most balanced image because obviously I played around with it. So now, actions, create Luminosity Masks and press play. Go out onto the internet, search Luminosity Masks, Photoshop actions, go to the panel menu of the actions panel and go load actions that have the extension .atn for action. This will create in the channels panel 18 luminosity masks. Each mask will represent a range of luminosity in this image. But it's important and vitally important. When you do it, you pick the balanced exposure. Visibility has meaning. Do not have the dark one visible, because if I do and turn that one off, look at the channels change. When I Ultra Option key click here, watch those channels change. So the channels represent what's visible. So when you come to create the mask, you must do it with the balanced exposure. Brights 1, it's a grayscale version of your image actually, right down to bright 6, and that's showing you the very, very brightest part of the image. So darks 1, well, it's the opposite way around, right down to dark 6. Now that's a lighthouse, by the way, medieval one. If you use the hue adjustment layer, you could use this as a mask just to put a glow around those openings there. So things like that you get to realise when you start using luminosity masks. So dark 6, then we got midtones, which is pretty obvious, right down to midtone 6, where there's hardly any midtones at all. Like darks 1 has the most darks. Brights 1 has the most brights, and bright 6 has only the brightest brights, and dark 6 only the darkest darks. So that's the way it works. Make the dark layer visible, click on the layer, Ultra Option key kept pressed, click on the layer mask icon to make a hide all layer mask. So black conceals, white reveals. Most of us know that. So now I need to use a mask, let's say lights or brights. Some people call them brights or lights. Brights 1, as I said, it's not ideal because it's 50% grey, and I want something that makes that dark, that building, it looks like brights 2. Command and Control key kept pressed. You'll see the marching ants appear on the hand cursor. Click down. I could go to select, load selection, and you'll see it's on brights 2, but yeah, I've selected it anyway. Into the mask, D for default colours, white in the foreground, black in the background. B for brush. Opacity is at 70%, 0 will make it 100%. Shift and 5, let's say, will be 50% flow. 3 will be 30% opacity. So shift and a number will change the flow. A number by itself will change the opacity. So 0, 5 done quickly will be 5% opacity. 0 for 100%. Brush, quite large, but we'll have to work quickly. Right click, make sure its hardness is on 0. You want a soft brush. So now I'm going to paint down with white. Command 0 to fit back on screen. Now I could go Command and Control H to hide the marching ants, but be careful because you will forget you've done that. But in this occasion, I'm going to do it. So paint down, you can see the image becoming darker. It's only picking, the areas that are being dictated by that selection. So I'm painting around thinking that's not really enough. So what I'm going to do, I could invoke Adobe Camera Raw and make it darker. I could look inside the layer mask and see what I've done. Or I could load up, let's say, Brights 1, which is a risk. I know that. So I'm going to click on it and Command click on Brights 1. The reason it'll be a risk, it might select some of that building and I might get a luminance leak off it, but let's see what happens. I'm not going to go Command and Control H. I'm just going to paint down, but I'm going to be quite careful when I come around here. And I then will look at the mask and see what I've got basically. I'm going roughly around the edge of that in case I'm going to get a luminance leak. I've got a huge brush here, so I don't think it matters that much. And just get down there. Don't forget, the mask on the bright one will probably get rid of a lot of problems I might have with this one. So that's looking pretty good. What I'm going to do now, though, is double click on the thumbnail to bring up Adobe Camera Raw, and I've decided to make it a slight bit darker. It's not rendered properly on my screen yet, and that's really going to help things along a lot. Okay, that'll do. So you've got this facility all the time via having smart objects, and all we've done is emulated different exposure values using a copying of the smart objects. That's looking a lot better. Command and Control D. I like that. That's fine. No more needs to be done. Brights or bright. Same thing. Alt Option key kept pressed. Make sure you don't have any selection. Command and Control D to ensure that, or select, deselect. And now, Alt Option key kept pressed. I'm going to put a hide all layer mask on. Now we're going to use one of the darks. So this is really exposure blending. Now you can use these masks for adjustment layers, but this is pure exposure blending using Luminosity Masks. So dark 1 looks not dark enough, if you see what I mean. Dark 3 looks the best. So Command or Control key, press on dark 3, and then go to the layer mask, Command and Control H to lose the marching ants. Make sure it's visible as well. And I'm going to paint around here. Now, it's already looking quite bright anyway, so maybe the darks layer or the normal layer was too bright. But it's what I want, so I'm not complaining. Now, the big, obviously, test is on this. So I'm going to paint on this to make this brighter. Make the brush a bit smaller. I know I've got a selection there and it shouldn't matter, but just in case, I'm going to paint around there. This is a very hard object because it's got some slightly ill-defined edges, so it's very easy to have a bit of luminance leak on it. So even a really good luminance mask will probably struggle here. So I'm going up there, going back down. Now, if I wanted to get a bit more adventurous, I could load up, let's say, I think this is Darks 3 I had loaded up. Darks 2, Command and Control click. And go over it again, Command and Control H, with a slightly bigger brush and brighten it up a little bit more. Because Darks 2, let's say, allows more of this building to be white. All right, I'm going for Darks 1. Command and Control click. So if you click on it, you'll see what it's like. So Command and Control click. It's not quite white, and you've got to be careful you're not going to wash it out. So Command H into the layer mask. I'm going to be extremely careful here because I might flatten it off, and I do not want that. So let's go back up and down. I know I could be a bit risky and move outside, but I know I'm going to get a luminance leak. It's one of those things you just get used to. So I'll probably, I'm not being perfect here, far from it. If I painted inside the mask, Alt Option key kept pressed, I can still paint and you can see what I'm doing, see? So sometimes having the mask on could be really good. So I'm making sure I don't get a luminance leak. It's a tiny amount there, but I'll put up with that. So sometimes it's good to do it like this so you can see what's going on. I'm leaning into the microphone a bit. I hope I'm not shouting. And just round there a little bit. Now, I've still got the selection. It's still there. I've just hidden it. So if I put it back on, Command and Control H, I've still got it. And maybe it's fine round here so I can, I don't have to, I've leaked. Command and Control Z. You saw it happen there. It's a difficult one to work with, Darks 1 and Bright 1, because, it's going to select other areas of the image. And if it's this type of image, it will cause you problems. So what I might do here is click once, shift click and go up there and make a straight line. And then same again there. Shift click one there and go up to there. And then click down once there and shift click there. And maybe click there and shift click down there for a straight line. Go into the straight line there. This is the area where I've got to be careful, really careful. And round there a little bit. So I've done it kind of the wrong way round in some ways by using the layer mask and painting into it. But same principle and a bit round there as well. I'll probably be protected down there. It's round here I know that I got the luminance leak. So there's a little bit of sun flare there which is showing up. I don't know if you can see it, it's there. It's not been selected, bit strange. But anyway, back to the image, Command and Control D to lose that. I don't think it's perfect. In fact, I might just darken down the brights one a little bit because I think that looks too washed out when it renders on my screen. Right, I'm going to take it down a little bit, not too much. Bring down the contrast a bit and the clarity, or maybe even bring it up actually. So it was a difficult image because it wasn't exposed for properly. So that's looking quite good. I'm going to leave it at that. So you can see the power of smart objects here as well. I think that looks fine. Let's go back to Lightroom and look at the one I did purely with Adobe Camera Raw. And how I did it was M for the graduated filter. I'm going to show you what I did because I use Luminosity Masks here as well. So Adobe Camera Raw is come on leaps and bounds in terms of luminance because since October 2018, we've had the ability using a range mask based on color or luminance. Let it render on screen. I'm using a lot of memory here. My system's quite old, so it's not fair until it renders. So that's what I did in Adobe Camera Raw. And how I did it was I used a graduated filter and I excluded the dark areas of the image so it's only affecting the sky. Then I put an adjustment brush to brighten this up. And I did sort of use the luminance range mask to a certain extent, but I just mainly painted on it. So if I can get to develop module and show you. So M on my keyboard for the graduated filter, which is showing up there. Right, I'm getting there slowly. Click on the graduated filter. I've got two as a matter of fact. Show the luminance mask, and I've limited the range of the luminance mask from 60 to 100. So from 60% grey to 100. So I was able to exclude that building and most of the foreground here. Close on that. Also, K on my keyboard for the adjustment brush. And what I did with the adjustment brush, I painted on that and just brightened up a little bit. So let's put the luminance mask on. That's what I did. I painted on it. I had a bit of a leak, but I made sure that the range of the luminance mask just worked on the dark colours. So it didn't matter if I leaked outside. Let's press E and look at this image again. Take a good look at it. I think, yeah, it's not bad. Not bad at all. I would be quite happy with it considering where it came from. But with luminance masks here, tab key. So take a good look at that, then back to the Lightroom one, then back to Photoshop. One image, raw file, copied it twice, treated them to different exposures and settings inside Adobe Camera Raw, ran the luminosity mask on the balanced exposure. That's really important. If you remember one thing, make sure you've only got your balanced exposure visible, i.e. the eye icon is the only thing showing on that balanced one there. So Command 0 to fit back on screen. So that's really important when you come to run the actions. And if you download some actions, go to load actions and find them and just run it. The concept of luminosity masks is quite straightforward. The actual implementation of them is extremely difficult. So that's it, guys. Thanks very much.